Jake Roos, you mentioned the freshmen in general. Palmer Toms, I wanted to give him a shout out as he is sitting courtside with Greg Sankey at the SEC tournament. The list of freshmen to watch, and these are guys, Jake Roos, that you were just covering pretty heavily not too long ago. So let's just go through them really quick and get y'all's thoughts on them, because I'm excited about at least a couple of them. And your guy made the list, Jake Roos. We'll start with Tyler Williams. To me, I know Ra Thomas has more experience in college, but Tyler and Ra kind of have that similar frame. I know Tyler could probably put on a little bit more muscle to catch up to Ra, but you got some big bodies there that Georgia hasn't really had in the receiving game outside of maybe Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint for the past couple seasons now, because Pickens was out for most of 2021.
Yeah, AD was a taller guy, but he wasn't exactly thick.
Kind of lanky.
He was lanky for sure. Tyler's a little bit more, like I said, I think that basketball background, he's sort of built like a high school power forward, if you will. So yeah, I think Tyler Williams, sky's the limit kind of thing for him. It's really for him, his best football's ahead, I think. He hasn't been playing for a long time. Not a guy that, is sort of topped out in his ceiling. Played at a tremendous high school program down there at Lakeland. They're outstanding, the Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, that place is
it's a
powerhouse,
factory.
huh?
It's a factory, man. And, I think that's a huge benefit for Tyler Williams. He was playing against great competition down there, and he's a guy who, really kind of throughout this process knew what he wanted to do, was really kind of hard focused on the Bulldogs throughout it. Loved Brian McClendon, loved his vision. Another one of those guys that, Georgia, even that quick stop that he had in Miami, I think benefited Georgia with Brian McClendon getting to know Tyler Williams a little bit and touching base with him. So,
Brian McClendon was just like a Georgia operative at Miami.
He put in like a month, and he got in touch with like tons of kids, man. It was crazy. I mean, seriously, that happened. There were a lot of kids I spoke to once he arrived to Georgia that were like, "Oh yeah, I knew him from visiting Miami in January." And like, what a kick in the nuts to Mario Cristobal. I mean, just a nightmare. I mean, they got the Michael Crabtree comparison over there. That's one hell of a comparison. Georgia fans better hope that he's as good as Michael Crabtree, because
that comparison is going to be tough to live up to.
Like I said, go watch the tape on Tyler Williams. That's really what convinced me so much on him, was seeing what he put on tape. I think he's just a guy who has so many special attributes to his game, and I think that he can flourish in this offense.
Two guys that you've been high on, Jake Rowe, CJ Allen, and Jonel Aguero, also check in on Palmer's list. You've just heard from people at Georgia that have seen him play that those are two guys that are already making a name for themselves as early enrollees, and rolling into the spring. That can only be good things for both of those dudes in Athens.
I'll tell you what. I think I told this story on this show, and if I didn't, I told it on the board. But I wrote a story a couple months ago, and I mentioned instant impact freshmen, and I put Raylan Wilson in there, and I had somebody who would know shoot me a text with the link to that story, and it just said CJ Allen. And when somebody does that, they kind of reach out to you, and they're like, "Hey, I read your story. There's another guy that should have been in there." And CJ Allen was that guy. Now he's got a tough row to hoe here to get on the field, because Jawan Dumas-Johnson and Smile Munden, the scheme is second nature to them. And I think Smile Munden is bound for a tremendous football season. I mean, I believe he ended up being Georgia's leading tackler after missing basically a couple of games.
He was everywhere, man.
He was fantastic late in the season. I mean, down the stretch, he was probably Georgia's best defender. But with that said about CJ Allen, Jonel Aguero may be my favorite signee for Georgia in this class, simply because, man, I love the way he plays that safety position. I love how good of a wide receiver he was in this past year, this senior year in Massachusetts. I know that's not the strongest ball up there, but they get after it. And I tell you what, I like the way he's put together. He's a bigger, to me, version of Chris Smith, probably a bigger, faster version of Chris Smith, because I think they're very similar football players just in terms of body style. You hear some of the things about his maturity and his competitiveness. Jonel Aguero, Georgia would do really well to be able to pair him and Malachi Starks, a couple of experienced guys there, for as long as they can, and that may only be a year and a half. Because Michael's likely gone after 2024, and Jonel, maybe there's an opportunity for a junior and a sophomore to kind of go at it. And honestly, wouldn't shock me if we're looking back in 15, 20 years and we're talking about 2024 if both of those guys are healthy and you're saying, hey, that's the best Georgia safety tandem I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm on board with you there. I think that, listen, like you said, is it the toughest ball you've ever seen up there in Massachusetts? It's not. But
he was really good at IMG too. So
yeah, absolutely, man. And listen, Lewis Seen came up in those same ranks that he did before transferring over to Texas and finishing his career. So, those guys play tough out there. They know how to get it done, and I think that those guys are. I think Aguero is one of those guys definitely to watch out for in this class. I thought the Jonathan Abram comparison.
Yeah, Georgia people know that name.
Pretty interesting. And then there was the other one they had. CJ Allen as Sean
Weatherspoon.
Which that's an interesting one.
That is an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I hope so. To me, I'm not saying he is this guy, but
big Spoon fan.
But CJ Allen, to me, when you go turn on that tape, it reminds me a lot of what I saw out of Roquan Smith's tape in high school. He played running back.
Did everything.
He was a do everything guy at Lamar County. He was the running back. He was all over the field making tackles. He was dropping into coverage. He was coming into run support. He was affecting the quarterback. It just didn't really matter, man. And so he has that elite athleticism in the way that Roquan did. Will he be able to translate it over? I don't know. I mean, I'm not putting that on anybody, but he's definitely a tremendous, tremendous athlete.
Last two we'll wrap up here before we pick up the axe and chop some wood. Monroe Fleming, the best name of the 2023 signing class, and Damon Wilson. Monroe Fleming is my favorite early enrollee just because of his name and because he's huge. 6'7", 290 pounds, and all that competition on Georgia's O-line is going to be huge for him and will probably be slightly painful for him at times this upcoming season. But I think he also, from all the indications I've heard from you, Jake Rowe, and knowing what he did as a recruit, Jake Roos, he could end up messing around and getting some playing time this year.
I think that's possible. Sure. Listen, I'll tell you this: when offensive line coaches go to sleep at night, they dream of 6'8", 300-pound kids whose moms are yoga teachers, and that's what they got in Monroe Fleming. He is that big.
Dogs like some yoga now.
Listen, this kid, he's got the bend already, and that's what makes him so special. He blew people away at the Army All-American game, or the Adidas All-American game as it is now. But he was one of the standouts. I think the offensive line MVP of the week from everything I read. So I think Monroe, listen, if there's a freshman O-lineman who has a chance to break through and get some playing time, it's definitely Monroe Fleming.
Colts Mania over here in our comment section just jacked for the Dogs. Monroe Fleming, welcome to Indy. CJ Allen, you are an Indianapolis Colt. They can't jump out just yet, Colts Mania.
Colts Mania, listen, Colts Mania, thank you so much for watching our show tonight. I appreciate it. I have no idea where your lot come from. I don't know what planet. I don't know if you and Tennessee Man are neighbors. And then it's just some kind of you guys live. I think you guys live under the same power line. I don't know.
They live in the same hole in the ground. They're in the darkness retreat that Aaron Rodgers was in.
Yeah, and then Damon Wilson, just by virtue of the position, right? I mean, I think that they're going to be searching for guys on the edge. And Damon, Jake, I know that you really love his ability or his strength as a power.
Yeah, I just love that power. It's like I was talking to. Funny enough, I was talking to Charles Power, at the Carrollton.
Speaking of great names,
I know, right? I've said this over and over again. I'm so jealous of that dude. He's got it all. He grew up in Myrtle Beach, for crying out loud. The only thing I got over him is he went to South Carolina, and I think he went to South Carolina, and I went to Georgia. Maybe he didn't go to South Carolina. Maybe went to a better school than that. But anyway, we were talking about Damon Wilson. He goes, man, when you stand next to him, he's not the biggest guy. Like he's kind of long limbed and kind of a taller guy. Probably not much bigger than Nolan Smith, but in terms of height. But he is incredibly powerful. He's got a powerlifting background, and I'm telling you that and wrestling are a couple of things that just often translate to the next level. And I don't care where you play. I mean, if you play
Branson Robinson, for example.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what position you play. If you're used to that kind of strain and physicality, and you've got that kind of a raw ability to overpower somebody, I mean, listen, it's a physical game. It's a strong man's game. It's a big man's game. And when you possess the strength to play bigger than you are, there's not a whole lot that can hold you down in the game if you also have kind of the prerequisite size, even if it's the bare minimum.
Palmer made a note of the depth for Shadera Uzo-Duribe, and it's not quite as deep as the wide receiver core that we mentioned earlier, but you want to talk about a turning of the tables from one season to the next when Georgia just couldn't keep its edge guys healthy. All of a sudden, those cupboards are looking pretty full of talent going into 2023. I teased chopping wood, but Jake Roos, we have a decommitment tonight that a lot of people are asking us about in the comments. We're not burying, or I guess we are kind of burying the lead on that, but we're not forgetting about that bit of news. So what's the latest on the decision from Mr. Mizell?
Well, before we get to Ronnie Mizell's decommitment, and we will talk about it, I'm going to take a shot at Palmer for somebody he left off the list while he's not here.
Yeah. Give him the business.
Why? And he can't defend himself.
Take it away.
Jordan Hall should be on that list. There's no question about it in my mind. I don't know how you missed Jordan Hall on that list. Georgia took two defensive linemen in this class, Jamal Jarrett and Jordan Hall. Jamal Jarrett's probably not going to be ready in year one. It's going to take him some time, I think, maybe to pick it up. Jordan Hall, I think, is built for it. I think he's ready and rocking and rolling in the way that Bear Alexander was this year. Big, fast, physical guy. So I think that's an omission on the part of young Palmer Thoms. Jake, I'm curious if you had anybody else that you think he should have included on there.
No, I think that's about it. I mean, I do like Hall a lot. I think Hall was probably a guy you put on there, but simply because of the number of guys that Georgia's going to play on that defensive front. If for nothing else, you might see Hall kind of get some third down snaps in that DPR role that Bear Alexander played last year, because Bear Alexander's probably going to be asked to play first and second down, maybe a little bit more than he was this past year. Georgia's got a lot of really good defensive linemen in the fold. I think they need a strong class in 2024, but I like that pick. I also tend to kind of overvalue, or maybe I don't overvalue, maybe I'll value it just right. Speed. And I think Anthony Evans is a guy, maybe as a gadget guy or some different things that may be able to help Georgia. Although, because I think he's a little different than the two other speed merchants they have in Arian Smith and CJ Smith, because those guys are more straight line guys that can just go. I think Evans has more twitch and more elusiveness maybe than those two do. A little bit more, kind of a
jitter,
a hand on him in a foot. Yeah. Can't hit him with a handful of sand in a phone booth type dude.
The scouts for On Three say that Hall reminds him of Nick Fairley. That's a guy that Georgia fans never want to be reminded of again.
Yeah,
especially not Aaron Murray.
If he's that nasty, then that would,
yes. If he's that nasty, get some revenge.
Listen, Nick Fairley may have took his shots there, Murray, whatever. Nick Fairley's still a bad man. He's still a very. I mean, there goes that man, and he's him.